So Apple had an event today, WWDC for 2022. They launched iOS 16. I just installed it before I started shooting, and just seeing this home screen is so weird. Like just seeing widgets on a home screen that has been relatively unchanged for what feels like 5 or 6 years is pretty cool. Okay, I want to talk about a few things that I thought were very interesting. I would say this is one of the more interesting events we've had from Apple in a while. So let's start off with M2. They announced their newest addition to the Apple Silicon family, M2. And they stressed the point of how they're still focusing on energy efficiency. But this new chip has a significant bump up in transistor count and memory bandwidth, and you get faster CPU performance, you get significantly faster GPU performance, and depending on your workflow or whatever app that you use, you can seemingly get some very significant gains in performance over the original M1. Now, the headlining product that they have this new M2 chip in is their new MacBook Air, and this is a slimmed down version of their 14 or 16-inch MacBook Pro. It's super slim at 11 millimeters. Like, that is very thin for a laptop. Even compared to like some of the thinnest devices that you get in the Windows space, this is super thin. So it comes in 4 colors. There's a silver, a starlight, which is kind of like a champagne gold. They got space gray, and then their new color is midnight. It's like this dark blue that's almost black, but not quite. But I think we've seen this color on the Series 7 Apple Watch. Like, it's a very appropriately named color, midnight. It's still a fanless system, so it's a completely quiet laptop, but it has a slightly larger screen. So 13.6 inches, it's like vertical space that you get, and it's a notched vertical space, kind of like the 14 or 16-inch MacBook Pros, but it's still extra screen. It has MagSafe charging with a color-matched cable to boot. It has a quad speaker system, a high-impedance headphone jack for high-end headphones, and it still supposedly has a monster battery life. It looks like a fantastic system, but it is a $200 price bump from the previous generation of M1 MacBook Air. Now, the old one, like the normal M1 MacBook Air from 2 years ago, even right when that system came out, I thought that that was a great value for a laptop. Like, not just for an Apple product, but for laptops in general. I felt like the M1 MacBook Air was just a fantastic overall system. This, at $1,200, it's a better product for sure than the original M1, and they've grabbed a lot of features from the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pro. It even has that nice 1080p webcam, but $1,200 is just a lot more money than what you would expect kind of like the entry-level MacBook Air product to be. It's just expensive. I still think it's a great device, but it's just that original like love that it had for the M1 MacBook Air. It was just like an easy recommendation, right? It feels like that's a little tougher to give now, because $1,200 gets you a lot of laptop. It doesn't matter which brand or which OS you go with, really. Okay. The weird product to me is that 13-inch MacBook Pro. So this is a product that's been updated with this new M2 chip. And this is a laptop that isn't as powerful as a 14-inch MacBook Pro, but it's not cheap by any means. Like, it's still a $1,300 device, so it's technically more than a MacBook Air, like the base model, but it has a 10-core GPU, and I think once you match the processing capabilities, like, it's the same price as a MacBook Air. But this device, this 13-inch MacBook Pro, doesn't have new design or new colors. It doesn't have a new notched screen. It doesn't have a new 1080p webcam. It doesn't have MagSafe. It doesn't have fast charging capabilities. It doesn't have the color matched cables. You don't get all of the cool new stuff that's in the new MacBook Air, but it's still a $1,300 device. Now, you do get a slightly bigger battery, and you get the touch bar if you're into that, and you get a 67-watt charger if that's something you're looking for. But it's just so weird to me that that is a product that exists alongside that new MacBook Air for that kind of price point. Now, the one feature that I can see that might explain why this product even exists is the presence of the fan. So like last year, the MacBook Air is fanless, but the MacBook Pro still has a fan. I mean, it's the same product, but just with a chip drop. And this is like just a theory, but I think that this new M2 chip, because the GPU has the capability of running just a little more wattage than the M1 GPU. Like, it's better performance, but if you look at the charts, the M2 GPU does have the capability of pulling a little more juice. But I think in a chassis that is fanless, that extra bit of wattage is just enough for it to make a difference, in the sense that for the people that do pick up the 13-inch MacBook Pro, the system that does have a fan, you're gonna be able to use the GPU just in a more capable fashion than the MacBook Air, whether it's for an extended photo or video editing session or if you're playing games, because this time around, I believe that this M2 chip, because it has a little more power draw, especially when it comes to GPU use, if your tasks or games take advantage of that stuff, you'll want to pick up the one with the fan. Because last generation, like the M1 MacBook Air, M1 MacBook Pro, even in GPU intensive tasks, they were so similar in performance between the two products. And you had to lean on other characteristics of those two devices to guide your purchase decision. But this time around, I really feel like the M2 will shine with a little airflow. Now, I do like the pacing that Apple has chosen for these new products. Like, it's been 2 years since they launched the whole idea of M1, and like I like a 2-year product cycle instead of like a yearly, like M2, M3, M4. Like, if they'd done it every year, I just think it would have I don't think that would have been good for the industry, like environmental waste for one, but I just think that the pacing of this is proper on a 2-year cycle. Unlike the competitors that are literally dropping chips like sometimes more than twice a year. Okay, I want to move this conversation over to iOS 16. So it has a completely revamped lock screen. It looks and feels just so different. I think I was just so accustomed to Apple's uncustomizable home screen that I just got used to it. And like, it was almost comical as to how uncustomizable it was compared to Android phones. But this is just so much nicer. Even that font change. The moment I just updated my phone to iOS 16, I was just looking at the beta. I was like, just the thicker font looks so strange to me because I just haven't seen anything like this on an iPhone. You can change the style and font of the date and time, and you can add these widgets that just fundamentally change the functionality of the lock screen. It is so much better this time around. And it seems like they're encouraging the user to frequently change the lock screen. Like, you can just swipe through it and over the course of the day, just try out different things. It might be a little bit too much to change it all the time, but having access to something as simple as like the weather widget right on the lock screen is just, it's so good. This is the way it should have been. And having the ability for photos to go on top of the numbers to give it that kind of layered effect is kind of neat. Okay, I want to talk about messages. So they have 2 features that I think are of note for me personally about messages. One, you can edit recently sent messages and you can unsend very recently sent messages. And I think that's just such a nice feature. Like, everyone's been there, right? And not just on iPhones, like on any phone or any messaging service or app. Like, you sent something, you intentionally sent it out, and then like once it's out, you're like, oh my God, why did I send that? Like, you just feel like a complete clown or an asshat because you said something that you want to take back. And you normally can't on iMessage, but now it's there. Now, as for the new macOS Ventura, there was one crazy cool feature that I saw during WWDC that I was like, how are they doing that? So they have this demonstration where they take an iPhone and they stick it on top of a MacBook, and you can use the camera on the iPhone as a webcam. It sounds like a simple idea, and it is, but it's more the kind of complications of how do you make that really easy for the user. It's like no connection, no cables, just place it there and it works. And seemingly Apple has done a good job with that. But the crazy thing is they showed this example of how the user was able to use the ultra-wide camera to create this artificial top-down shot. It's the craziest thing. Like, that is on such a steep angle, and they're able to manipulate that video feed so that it looks like a top-down shot. It's so cool. And like, the number of times that I would have found that useful, like when you're doing something in front of you, like, normally when you have a webcam and you're just like interacting with someone on the webcam, you have to lift stuff up to the camera for them to see, or like on a laptop, you have to like tilt the screen down and try to like finagle the thing so they can see what it is that you're looking at, and then like tilt it back up so they look. It's such a pain in the butt. This is, maybe it's super simple and like no one's thought of it, but it's like so cool if it actually works the way that it does in the demonstration. But you see that top-down image on that screen? That's being created with the ultra-wide camera in a terrible position. And if they're still able to make a usable image like that, that's impressive. Okay, I need to spend way more time with iOS 16 and macOS Ventura to be able to get some real thoughts on it. And also that M2 device, when one comes in, hopefully we'll be doing a proper review on it. But there you have it. This is my kind of early impressions of the new stuff at WWDC.